Hey folks, welcome back to another episode of React Wednesdays. Today I have with me two fantastic guests, Chris and Ed, and our episode today is all about Figma, all the things you could be doing in Figma to actually level up your development game. So let's start off by maybe doing some introductions. Chris, you want to go first?
Sure. Hi, I'm Chris. I go by Hateful Crawdad online everywhere. I'm a UX designer at a big tech company, and I make Figma bites on the side to just teach everybody who wants to learn more about Figma and up level kind of their workflow. I've been using Figma since it was in beta, so I've seen it kind of grow up through all the different years, and it changes fast. It's hard to keep up with, and like even me, someone who uses a lot, the new features, I'm not a pro on them yet, still kind of figuring them out, working them into my workflow, and there's a lot there. So, and I've known Ed for a long time, so thanks for inviting me on the show, and yeah, I'll pass it over to Ed.
Yeah, so I've been a web developer for like 20 years, and I feel like I'm really behind the times. I don't know Figma. That's why I'm here. I wanted to learn more about Figma, and I've got a couple of good friends here that know it very well. So I got Kathryn and Chris together to chat a little bit about Figma and Figma Bytes. It's Chris' pet project up on YouTube. Something that I need to check out, and I'll post a link in chat as well. So when we get chatting about it, people can bookmark it. Kathryn, take it away.
Yeah. So before we actually dig into the real content, I am so curious where Hateful Crawdad came from. Will you please tell us the story?
Yeah. Funny little aside, like I get asked that so much, even at work, that I made a little like video, or I think I presented it in a thing like this internally one time. I cut that snippet and put it in my internal like work profile, so people can just go like learn it there, because I've said it so many times internally.
Sorry.
But no, it's fun. I love the story. But I'll say like the PC version of it. The PC version of it. When I was younger, I was, I don't know, trying to play like Yahoo Pool or something, and wanted to make a username. And I tried to do something that was called Lame Duck. And the reason behind that was there was a hotel like a town away that my dad used to make some like pervy jokes about, and it stuck in my head as a little 12-year-old, and I thought it'd be funny and kind of like a little inside joke. It wasn't available, and at the time Yahoo did some kind of, I don't know, early algorithm, something where it would suggest other things based on what you put. And it suggested Hateful Crawdad or something related to that, and it resonated because the town I grew up in, Kingsburg, had like a crayfish festival, and then there was like a jazz and food festival and music festival. So I was like, oh, that's funny. I'm not hateful, but I think like that'll be a little tongue-in-cheek. So when I got into my career, I almost dropped it. My first job, I did like CM at where I was working, and then as I got into my career, I was like, oh, it's going to be fun to like still be myself. And so I started using that everywhere, and it's been great. Icebreaker, it's never taken, and yeah, I always get to tell the story, and it's a fun little laugh.
Nope. That is great. You're right. I bet you never have trouble getting that name on any of the like thousands of new services that it feels like we now have to sign up for.
I bet social media of the week.
Yeah. Right. All like 6 of them that we now have to check all the time. But okay. Thank you. I'll start talking about Figma now, I promise.
Oh, it's all good.
So would you could kick us off by telling us a little bit about how Figma Bytes got started?
So a couple years ago, teams, I started seeing more and more people use Figma Bytes. It was becoming like the tool of choice for a lot of UX teams. And, I quickly, on the teams I was working on, saw people still either just using it like Photoshop or Illustrator or like Sketch, or they were confused on what exactly was different or the same about Sketch. Or even at first they were like bummed that maybe it didn't have some of the same features as Sketch at the time, but then it came along over the years. And I just kind of out of being, I guess I grew up, the way I learned everything in my career has been through like tutorial videos and people giving back to communities and just doing it for free like that. And I wanted to do that, but I wanted to do it in as shortest form as possible, because I know people's attention spans and time is also really limited these days. So we're like, how can we do this as quick as possible? And just as a way to really selfishly teach our team how to use Figma more. But we were like, this will be helpful for everybody, because I make it with a colleague. He likes to stay behind the scenes, but his name's Jared, and we used to work together at Google. He works somewhere else now, but we kind of plan the videos together, and I do all the editing and on-screen stuff, and he does some of the screen recording stuff, and just kind of like a fluid, it'd be as if me and Ed were working on something, be just kind of like friends, kind of making something. And we try to do one video a month, and it's been now a couple years. So, I don't know, they're super fun to make, and it's rewarding just to see people comment on how helpful it was. And even I go sometimes if I haven't used a certain feature for a while.
It's funny how you like write an article, do video, write, some piece of content, and then you get on, with your workflow and you're doing something and you get stuck and you're like, man, if somebody only wrote like a good article or made a tutorial video, you start searching for it and you're like, oh yeah, I did that years ago.
That's funny. Yeah. I just think it's a great way to give back.
Yeah. No, I'm with you. And I've definitely referenced blogs that I've written before, and it always feels very silly. And then I'm always glad that I wrote them. So how do you normally use Figma in your daily workflow? I want to hear a little bit about obviously this is kind of educating out, but for you, where does it fit?
Yeah. A lot of the work I do is on the design system side these days, or it's still kind of part of design systems, I guess, design ops or something, but building like resources and tools for our team to use to consume the design system in different ways, or to benefit from the design system in different ways. So a lot of the tools that I use in Figma are components, and like how you name things correctly, and some of the best libraries I've seen internally, because there's a ton of different libraries internally at big tech companies usually, and the ones that really work with the developers to make sure like layer names and structure of how the components are made and how the padding and everything works is the same on both sides. That's always the best. So that's the world I live in, is trying to like help designers realize that that's a better way of working, show them how to do it, and just give them the tools to get faster in Figma, where they might not even realize that they could do it. Especially when it comes to working with components. There's a lot of designers that I've worked with that kind of, they'll do them every now and then, but in their head it's more of like, oh, the design system thing, but they don't realize all the benefits you can get of making components in your own file. And I've taught so many designers the term dry, and every developer knows that term, but most designers don't, I realized. And so, that's the thing I kind of equate it to. I'm like, if you start doing something and someone gives you feedback and then you have to go edit 10 frames, that should be a component. So you can edit it in one place, and they get it eventually, but it's hard for designers to change their workflow when they're always have deadlines and they're used to what works and their team's used to what works. So that's another part of how I use Figma internally at my job too, is just like finding ways with beyond even Figma Bytes, I do other things internally, just teaching people, doing workshops and trying to spread the knowledge, because a lot of it is just they don't know that it can do what it can do.
Content creation is hard. Where do you come up with ideas for specific videos or subjects that you're going to tackle? Is it things that you run into yourself? Is it things that your team kind of brings up as a problem? Or
it's a little bit of both.
Magic recipe.
No, it's definitely not magic. Most of the time in the beginning, the first probably year of doing Figma Bytes videos was just like, okay, feature by feature, we just got to teach the basics and get the concepts across on how it works as quick as possible. And that kind of worked for a while, and we never really even had a specific order to it, because one thing about making this series was we wanted to spend as little time as possible on it and have as much impact as possible. So, we didn't even get very organized with a content calendar or like what's coming next. We, I think, had a bulleted list of topics, and, it'd be a week or two before we needed to do the next video, and we'd be like, which one do we want to do next? And occasionally we'd get really ahead and maybe do like 4 or 5 and batch it, and then we'd be like, we can kind of like just breathe for a couple months and not actually make the content, but still teach people, which is nice. But most of the time it's a month by month. Like we're making it probably a week, 2 weeks before. The quickest one I made was 3 days before I wanted to post it, because I try to post around like the 15th of every month. And I think I made it on like Monday, Tuesday, and posted on a Wednesday one week. So that one I definitely phoned in a little bit. It was an easy one.
Like a really basic feature. Here's how to change the typography.
Something like that.
Have a good month. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's a little mixed, but then there's other times where we do, you know, a lot of common practices come about like how people organize their Figma files in a way where it's not just for them, but like when someone else jumps into their file, how do they find their way around? And so we've done a video about like wayfinding and treating your Figma file like a product, and thinking about the other people that are going to use your file, because Figma is so much more of just, you're not just opening a Photoshop file. So there's some of that. And then other things, when I was doing, a couple of years ago, I was on the team where I was doing design system work and product design. So I was using a lot more of the prototyping features and those type of things to convey my designs a lot more. And so there were certain things we would, you know, techniques we'd pick up on how to organize prototypes. So we have one that's some concept that we kind of made up called prototype tokens. And it just is a way to like have these empty frames that attach to the frame that you want it to click to. And then you turn that into a component and reuse it in all the different frames. Smart. And so you kind of have this system of navigation links that you can use everywhere. It doesn't always work for every use case, and it is a little complicated, but like it worked for us, so we shared it. And then there's one video actually where I think it was something about nested interactive components, where we made the whole video thinking we've like found some edge case about how it should work, and ours wasn't working. So we found a solution to it and realized that we had just like done something wrong. Someone in the comments was like, actually, you just missed this part of what was going on. So, but it was like a nuanced little thing. So it's still up there because it's still interesting to like learn from what we did.
Maybe someone else did the same thing. Yeah.
But it was still such a weird, it was an interesting one. So yeah, watch that one if you want to see the interesting solution. But it was just a bug that or not a bug, it was a problem with how we built it.
Most of your stuff, I think, is in the editor specifically. You thought about branching out into some of the like FigJam and the other like Figma tools, or
we need to, yeah,
pretty strictly in the editor.
we need to do some FigJam stuff, but yeah, there's been so much to do in the editor that we've been in that world for the mostly. But yeah, we want to do some FigJam ones, and there's other ones that are more, I guess they're kind of like the wayfinding one, but it's more about like what kind of workflow changes you might make with a combination of some of these features, or like best working with design systems and stuff like that. And those ones, we'll get to them maybe eventually, but it's always, the features keep coming out. We have to keep teaching the new features, and we're still behind on, like, we haven't done one on sections and variables and all the new dev tools. So,
I was gonna say, I need to catch up on variables.
Me too, still.
I'm behind. Yeah, I feel really behind on auto layout, and at some point later in this video I want to make you explain.
I love auto layout. I can explain it because it's similar to Flexbox.
Okay, that's what I've heard, and I've seen like files that use it, and it looks great, and also it terrifies me right now. I'm so intimidated.
You're not alone. Honestly, the number one thing that is probably like a 50, I don't know, it's 50-50, but it seems 50-50 split when I talk to designers is an auto layout. They either hate it or they love it. There's like no in between.
That's my goal. By the end of this, I'm going to be less scared.
Hopefully I can convert you, because I was on the hate it side at first, because I think there was a moment in time where it required me to shift my workflow just enough to where it was an annoyance, and I didn't want to do it when I was in projects, because I was like, it's quicker, I can be quicker. But then as I started like forcing myself to do it over time, or finding ways to try it, and then it became second nature, and I was like, okay, I get it now, especially once the absolute positioning feature came out. Before that, there was times where it was just like, okay, I'm not doing auto layout because it's just going to be impossible.
That is one of my favorite things about doing this show is I just get people on to convince me to do things that I know I should be doing,
Yeah.
but I'm not quite. The last guy who was on here was giving me the hard sell on TypeScript, and I was like, no, I need that. Thank you. So I just need a little push. Besides, you mentioned that was one that a lot of people kind of struggle with. I'm curious what other features or topics are things where you found that there's some like hesitancy or unease.
Honestly, there's like a good split on just using components from a design system. Like people pull them in from a library, and there's a whole bunch of people that still just instantly detach, and they don't even try to use it the other way, or they get to the point where there's a limitation in it and they detach, which is fine. Like I'm all for people doing what they need to do to make their job done, but that seems to be one where it's just so easy to detach and then just do what you want, that there's a lot of people that don't take the time to learn how it might work, or to know how to even build components themselves, because if they learn that side of it, then it would make sense for them a little more on like how maybe you should use the components that you pull in. Especially some of the more, like some of the newer components coming out in design systems have the like instant swap properties built in, where you can slot your own content into these components, and like designers are like, what, like how? So
it's so much more powerful. Sometimes I've gone down that rabbit hole and I'm like, I could really, like, you can do this.
And that one, oftentimes I think there's a hiccup there, because the slots inside of components, a lot of times design systems are building components with auto layout because we want to keep things in order. And if you're a designer building your little part that you're going to slot into this auto layout and you haven't put auto layout on it, and you slot it in, all this weird stuff happens, and then you have to start playing with like constraints and how it's resizing, and you get into this weird broken state that you might not know how to fix, where if you had just turned auto layout on in your original component, even if you didn't use it, just turn it on, then you swapped it and it would be fine. But it's just like, you just wouldn't think about that unless you've done it and run into that.
Right.
What does auto layout translate to on like the finished product side? Like, is it
in what side?
Flexbox or
it's kind of Flexbox. There are some weird caveats about how it works differently in the Flexbox, but it's the closest. That's the closest equivalent, like in CSS.
So, and this one might be polarizing. How are we feeling about the like code that Figma will kind of auto generate that you can pull from like the inspect tool? Decent? Concerning?
That's what I was trying to figure out with the auto layout stuff. Like, what is it?
That was
actually,
like,
I don't know what it spits out. I've never looked what it spits out with auto layout, actually. That's the thing about it. I don't use it that much ever. I don't, in the teams I've worked on, the developers don't use it that much either, because most of the time there's already like a React library or something that we have that's a match to the coded component. So the designer can just spec it like and say it's this component with this parameter changed to this and this thing changed to that, and the developer, like, that's the best case. And the teams where we've had that much of a like parity across the systems, writing specs as a designer isn't so easy.
Oh yeah, no, when you have that UI kit that's like synced up, it makes everything
but
1,000 times easier.
From my like limited understanding of it and having just like glanced at the code, it definitely, from all the tools over the years I've seen try to spit out code, it's doing things in a better way than most of the other ones I've seen.
I think there's something about it. I will always just feel super hesitant. Anything that spits out code, it gets a little bit of like a side eye.
Yeah, it's like you got to consider it prototype code at the most.
Yep. I do think the inspect tool stuff is really cool now, and especially some of the new dev mode stuff that really just like cranks that up to 11. But I'm probably getting ahead of myself, because I'm sure there are folks that are going to be watching this either now or later that are like total Figma beginners. So maybe let's rewind a smidge, Ed specifically. I was wondering if you could kind of give us like a little introduction. So for folks that are feeling that kind of like intimidation, or like they know they should learn it and they've been putting it off, can you kind of give us like a little Figma 101?
Yeah, for sure. Let me share my screen.
And yeah, for anyone who is watching live and is in the chat, feel free to drop in if you have questions, if there's some feature that you've been putting off learning about, or that you don't feel like you have a full understanding of. We're going to figure it out.
Yeah.
You're together.
Well, I guess I'll start back here. So yeah, there's a home and community. If you're new to Figma and you haven't checked out the community, honestly, you could just go here and have a whole day of just fun trying things. There's a ton of things people have built and they just give to you. And I mean, if you want to learn how something's built, look at how something's organized, look at what other design systems are doing. You know, it's all here. There's plugins, widgets, so many things. So definitely like come to the community, check things out that people offer. It's a great way to learn. And also there's a lot of tools that might speed up your workflow. But in the home section, you'll see, you know, just like recent files, teams that you're in, and then you can start new files, design files, or fig jams. I won't go into fig jam too much, but or you can import. So if you have sketch files, you can import them. It works okay. It won't be super nice or anything, but you'll be able to get your vector shapes and stuff all in there, and then maybe organize it if you want. But starting from a new file is fairly easy. You just click the new design file, which is what I did earlier, and then you get a tab. And Figma works in a Chrome browser on a tab pretty well. You can also download the app and have it run in desktop mode, but really all it is a Chrome wrapper anyway. So it's still just a Chrome window, a Chrome tab at the end of the day. So it's all tabs. You can come in here and name your file like normal, double click up here and do some other things. There's version history, which is nice as you're working through files. And then there's a share button like a lot of Google Docs and different tools have up in the top right. So you can click share and invite people. You can publish your own file to the community.
Would you mind maybe zooming in a little bit on your screen so folks can...
see, will it...
Yeah,
I might
sorry
have
to
to
interrupt.
go... Let me see if I can change the UI. I might have to go into an actual Chrome tab. Yeah, let me go to a Chrome tab. Hold on. Copy link. Now let's see.
That was something I eternally forget. And someone in the chat is always like, we cannot read.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
It's usually when I'm coding and I'm like, look at this. And they're
like,
if only.
I don't know. Let's see. How can I zoom in the browser still? I have to do the view menu. Wait, but that's doing... Oh, there we go. Yeah. Zoom in. Is that better?
Yeah, I think that's a little better.
Close this other guy so I don't have myself floating around in there. But there we go. It disappeared. Okay, good. I can zoom in more too if it's not big enough, so let me know.
And then drop us a line in the chat, folks, if you can't say anything. Otherwise, carry on. Sorry, I'm done interrupting now.
No, it's all good. There's a toggle for developer mode, which I don't know if we'll get into that much. I haven't used it a ton yet. And then play is prototype. There's no prototype here, but when you build prototypes in Figma, you can just present play here, or you can preview it and it'll actually open your prototype. And it won't do it right now, but it'll open up in a little window so you can see it as you work if you want. So that's kind of like the top area. And here's all your tools. So it has all the normal vector tools that you would imagine from other things like Illustrator. There's shapes and pen tool, type tool. This is where widgets and plugins are. So you can actually just come search in these if you need to find something. Like a common one is typing on a shape path, because you can't do that in Figma out of the box like you can in Illustrator. And then there's comment mode, which, you know, when you send this file to other teammates or the people, they can come in and drop comments by clicking and leaving a comment in the file. And then you'll be able to see it and respond. What's that? Get notified replies via QR code. See, that new stuff all the time. So you get a comment and then you can close it, resolve it, mark as unread, all kinds of different things there. And then beyond that, you mostly work with frames. So here there's a tool called Frame. So when you need to create a new area to work, you can hit F or come to the frame button in the top left, and it gives you a lot of presets. So if you wanted to choose a preset, a mobile preset, or any of these common things, you can. A lot of times I just do the desktop one or mobile, depending on what I'm doing. These days, more of my stuff is mobile, but a couple months ago, it was more desktop. For years before that, it was desktop a lot. And now you have a frame. So this is essentially like an artboard or something. And Figma also has groups, which a lot of people will make shapes and they'll start like grouping. So they like make this a group with Command G or right click and group selection, which is fine. I think if you're just organizing things you want to move together, move around, groups are great. I just frame everything these days. Because it's essentially the same thing, but you get more benefits of being able to put properties on it and like turn into components, and I don't know, it just feels cleaner to me. So that's like my own personal thing. I frame everything. Like even if it's inside of here and I wanted to frame it, I would just, instead of putting it in a group, I would frame the selection instead. And then you have a layers panel, so you name everything over here, keep things organized. But I don't know, like there's a lot I could go over, but like that's the general structure of the UI. On the left is layers, actually a couple other things, assets. So if you've pulled in a team library, like maybe you have some library that you wanted to pull in internally, you can turn it on here. There's pages, so you can have multiple pages in your file. Each one has its own layers panel that shows up below it. And then on the right is the prototype and the design tabs. So this is where all your styles and things. So if I put a shape on here, this is where all the positioning, this is where you can add auto layout, do layout grids, control all your fills and strokes and effects. And then in the prototype is once you've started connecting a flow, then you get the settings for like, where's the flows start? Is there multiple flows? You can put description, name it, change your settings, change the background color of your prototype. If you want a device frame around it, you can put a device frame around it. So those are where you find all the prototype settings for when you click play, which now I can click because I have something set up. So that'll open a new tab with your prototype. You're not going to see anything because I didn't change, but if this was red or something, I went back here, then you clicked and it goes. So those are kind of like all the areas. I can dig into any part of it if you want, but that's the overview of like where everything is in Figma.
So maybe to dig into it, I want to ask Ed. So Ed, you mentioned wanting to learn a little more. I'm curious kind of what your goal would be, right? So if you were like, I want to learn Figma to do X, and maybe let's kind of talk through that.
The most dead simple web page layout. Like you got like header, footer, content space, like in the body. Like how would you start a project like that?
Yeah, let's do that. So I start with F, that's frame, and then I usually just click because I have a size in mind probably. Sometimes I'll click from the preview, but I don't know, I do this a lot for some reason. I'll just, if it's a long web page, I'll give myself a longer bit to start with. Actually, sometimes I don't even do that. Let me go back there. Sometimes I might just start with the frame. Maybe I'll name it. I like to name things as I go if I can, unless I'm like very, very rushed. But like maybe this is body or container or something, whatever you want to call it, or the thing, maybe it's homepage. And then maybe I want like a header area. So I'll click frame again and click inside. It puts a frame inside of it, and I'll give it a fill. So you can come to the right here and click plus on fill. Let's do a wireframey looking thing. So I'll make it gray. And now I want to start making the layout. So this gets into auto layout a little bit, but I use it for everything usually. So at this point, I'm grabbing the container, and you can hit Shift A, or you can click over here and click the plus, or you can right click and say add auto layout. I use Shift A all the time. So that actually, now you see it changed. So if I go back, like this is just kind of willy-nilly in there, and then Shift A and it kind of locks into place. And what it does is it gave it some defaults in the layout, in the auto layout panel. And what we have going on over here is like, which way is the content going to flow, left or right, or is it going to wrap? That's a new one. Or is it going to go down the page right now? How do we want everything to align inside of this auto layout? So I think we'll do center top for this one. And then what are the spacing between elements? Let's just do 24 or something. And then is there padding? So if I wanted padding on my website or this layout, maybe we want 64 or something on the sides and maybe nothing on the bottom, or maybe we do want something on the bottom only, or only the top. You can click this little icon and you can expand and do sides separately. So if we wanted like 24 on the bottom for whatever reason, we could. So now I have this auto layout. Now I can decide like how big I want this this to be. It'll basically respect this now because it's inside of the auto layout. So if I want my header image to be, I don't know, 1100 or something, then we can do that. Actually, I'm gonna do it. I'll zoom out. Let's get a good view of this. So now that's 1100. The rest of the page is just respecting the rules we set up. There's padding on the outside. 64. This is another way to change it. You can drag or you can click right on the areas here, and it'll do it. And now let's see, we want typography. So maybe we'll click T to get text, and I just click inside. Oh, that went inside of that frame. I want it inside of this frame. So click here, and we'll say like page title, and I'll make it bigger. Command Option forward caret makes it bigger, just like an Illustrator and stuff. Or you can change it over here. Maybe we want this to be 40 and hold. So this just centered in the layout. So the reason being, like, it's respecting the auto layout. I put it inside of this home page. So it's treating each of these kind of like a div inside of Flexbox. If this was Flexbox going down the page, and this is the first one, this is the second one, in between them is 24 pixels, because we put 24 pixels right here as a space between in the vertical gap. If we were to change this to like left align, then it would left align it, right align. We can stay centered for now. And then maybe we want to add a subheader. This is where you can start to nest auto layout. So right now we still have 24 pixels between these. Maybe we want our subheader to be closer to that. So what you can do is select both of those and do the same thing. Either click this plus for auto layout or hit Shift A. It'll take the settings that are there right now and transfer them over. So we know there's 24 pixels between them because it's in the other auto layout. So when I click plus, it's going to transfer that over, but then we can adjust it. So if we wanted our header to be closer, like maybe 8 pixels or something, we could do that. And so we have this little tiny auto layout now inside of here, inside of the other auto layout. And this is now just like these are the children now that respect the layout rules that we set up, just like you would in Flexbox. If I were to change this to this, this flow, then it does like that with the same, just puts things side by side instead of on top of each other. So that's how I build out the whole page. I don't want to go too far and get into the weeds of it all unless you have something specific, but I would just keep adding elements down the page like that and doing layouts. If I needed a side-by-side layout inside of this, you can use arrow. So if you select something, you can move it around in the auto layout. If I wanted maybe like to create a little side-by-side kind of thing here, I could wrap these in another auto layout, turn them to sideways, take this one to like the size of my sidebar or something that I want, make this one smaller too. And then you could say fill container as well. I think, let's see, wait, not that one, this one. If I do this one as fill container, it'll spread those ones out because they're in an auto layout. So I could have, you know, my layout here if I wanted.
That fill container one was a new trick to me. That was pretty cool.
Oh yeah, those are other like
Damn.
kind of responsive things that you can do. You can do fill, you can do hug contents. There's different, it's fill and hug for the most part. You can do fixed width as well. So there's different combinations of those that you can do with nesting. It's the same way you would kind of think about nesting a CSS layout with Flexbox, or maybe even CSS Grid a little bit. But to me, it makes sense more as Flexbox.
No, I agree. I think especially with some of the alignment tools and stuff, that seems like the most direct kind of mental map. I get where you're coming from.
Yeah, and like an important part of it too with the absolute positioning. So maybe I wanted like a icon to like always float like up in the upper right for whatever reason. I could make my icon I don't know, just random, just gonna be ugly, but and put it in here, and it'll try to go in the auto layout because this is auto layout. But there's this button right here that's absolute positioning. If I click that, it takes it out of the flow just like you would expect, and then I can move it around with my mouse arrow keys, or with it'll try to put it back in the flow sometimes, depending on where you put it. But now I can put it here, and no matter what I do with my auto layout, or actually here's another thing to look at. I have it absolute position, but I want it to stick here. It's set to left top, so I need to set it to right top in the constraints, and then it'll stick to the right side.
Neat.
If these were set to fill, whoops, yeah, see, now it's fill. Let's see, what did I do? That's unfixed because we want it to be fixed. Yeah, never mind, that's right. So yeah, it can get kind of hairy. You gotta, if you're getting really, really nested, sometimes you can do your layout first and then add auto layout, and it'll try to do it as much as possible, except for like these nested things. It would have a hard time with those.
We get a good comment from Findle, one of our regulars. It says, I love working off Figma. Can't design worth a dang, but getting a Figma instead of Photoshop gives me the exact margins, paddings, and colors, which I thought was a really good opportunity for us to take a look at like inspect mode.
Yeah, let's look at it. Let's see.
So for folks that maybe aren't Findle and aren't as used to getting a Figma file as part of the handoff, what can devs get out of Figma?
Yeah, I've barely explored this, so let's look. So this is introducing it to me for the first time. So
I just say this is brand new.
In this
full
file,
disclosure.
Yeah, it is brand new, and I haven't used it in the Figma Bytes space yet. So it's introducing it to me. So yeah, we'll say
they launched a VS Code extension that I think encapsulates this as well.
It does, yeah.
Yeah.
I haven't tried that.
Even outside of dev mode, though, like dev mode is definitely the newest, best way to do it. But there's still inspect tools like in Figma.
I think this is it now.
Is it?
There used to be a tab next to plugins or next to prototype called inspect, or code or something, and now it's dev mode.
See, I've learned something today.
Yeah.
I thought that was still there, and dev mode was just the expanded version, but it's been replaced.
I'm not sure. Let's see. I don't think so.
No, I think you're right.
Yeah, let me see if it's hiding anywhere.
But yeah, for folks that haven't been obsessively keeping up with Figma news the way that we have, dev mode is literally, I think, less than a month old at this point.
I think it came out in June or something.
Brand new.
So yeah, I believe this is the new way. So it's CSS by default. It didn't give me that option again. Let's see, where would you change that? So I could open in VS Code. Let's look at what that looks like actually, because I have that. So
yeah, sorry to put you on the spot then. I thought there would be like a middle ground of like something you would know, and also this brand new thing.
No, it'll have familiar bits, like for sure.
Yeah.
I can't open the VS Code thing, so it wouldn't work. But yeah, they have VS Code, GitHub things, there's different plugins. So it's telling me, the name of the file, homepage. There's a column layout. I guess as the developer, I could link to things here. Like if we had a storybook or like a component page or something that linked to the spec for this, you could put it in here. And then here's the code. So it looks like they've really leaned into kind of how inspect mode is doing it in Chrome and stuff like that. So here it gives you the layout in CSS, how it's built up with padding and margin. and then below is how you would do it with CSS, and it is treating it like Flexbox. So
So that answers our earlier question.
yeah. So, and depending what you're selected on, so we have that, and we know this is another Flexbox. So if I selected that, then it's showing us, yeah, this is just flex column, gap is 8. So I mean, really, it is putting out good CSS. It's not giving you HTML, which is probably good, because that's I think where a lot of times it would give bad code in other programs back in the day, like
right, you end up with that like div soup.
yeah. But you still have to do, like, as I don't know, if you're working on a system or any real production code base, you know, you're probably not just going to copy and paste CSS. Still, you're going to have some kind of class system set up, some kind of SAS thing set up.
I was
Whatever
going to say,
using.
presumably you have like global styles that would handle a lot of this, and it wouldn't be on a like piece by piece basis. But still,
but it does speak the front end developer's language a little more, where they can like understand what's going on in the layout, other than just how a designer visually sees it. So yeah, see, it does say inspect here now. So, and I guess there's plugins specifically about this. So yeah, I still there's more it can show in here, because if you have properties, this will show you the properties if they're built into Figma. So if you don't want the code, you can just see
that is really nice,
values.
I think.
Yeah, and if you want to change language, I guess this is here. This is where you do it. Yeah, so you can switch between different iOS and Android languages, and it looks like there's plugins too for other languages.
Nice. Okay, I will bring you back into the realm of things that you actually know the answers to.
There's another part of dev mode I saw the other day. Actually, I'm curious. Like you can do sections in Figma now too, and like if I gave this a name. I'm curious.
So what is a section in Figma? What does that mean?
A section, it's kind of like a container of frames, so you can put frames inside of this and give it a name. And I saw this the other day, and I was wondering, like, you can mark it ready for dev. So if you do that, then you can open in dev mode, and like I guess that's just a cue for the developer that it's ready to go, which is pretty cool. I don't know exactly what else it can do yet, but I just saw that. So
somewhere in there, I haven't used it yet, but I did read a thing about it. Somewhere there's a way to like mark which specific things have changed. So if you had like a version history where it was like, I've gone in and I've updated just this one section of this page, you could mark it. It'll do like a comparison and show like basically a change history. So you can mark things as ready for dev, and then the dev can look and see what's different from the last version, which is so cool to me.
So it just gives them, that's cool. And sections, so other than doing stuff like this where you're organizing things in prototypes, when you're using sections, you can like say you had a flow where would be a good example, like maybe you have a gallery, a homepage with like a bunch of images, and you click on one of them and it opens like, I don't know, a group of something, and you can swipe or you can like swipe through them all, and then you go back. Sections in prototypes remembers where you're at in that page. So if you were to go back into that section, it would remember which page inside that section you were on. So you can do like a little bit of that with your prototype depending on the workflow. I honestly haven't used it a lot in any of the prototypes I've made, but that was kind of the use case I saw them use in their demos when it first came out.
I found the release announcement for the dev mode. It came out at the end of June, so it's barely a month old.
Yeah, it is. Yeah. It is super, super new.
Yeah, that's funny. No more ending up with complaints about something being 2% too far to the left. You say that, but it still happens. That's what I'm saying. You developers, like if a developer comes and shows interest to a design team in Figma, like that's a good door for a team. Like if you're not talking to designers on your teams about, how to best build components, or getting that shared knowledge so the designer knows like how things are nested in the markup of the component, and they can build their stuff the same way, especially with the design system team, if you have that at your company, like that's the best way to do it as a developer, that relationship between design and dev. And like you can get really into it with the design and dev relationship down to like when you're talking about what's the API of this component, even like if you're a team that writes like docs and outlines all the details of an API for something, and work with the designer during that, and you guys can get like the best of of both worlds into the API from the get-go. And also like then the designer understands what that is. You might have to teach them at first like what that means and stuff, but those like as early as you can get working with designers with these reusable resources in a system definitely is like the way to go.
Since you mentioned reusable resources, before we wrap up, because we don't have like a ton of time left, I would love to hear you talk a little bit, maybe give us a little demo on components in Figma.
Let's do it. I love components. So let's build a common one is a button. So to build a button, basically, you want text. So if I were building this in code, or whatever I was playing around, I'd probably start with my text. And it'd be, we'll just say button. So this is now just a text node. What size is this? 12. Let's go a little bigger. I'll just zoom in too. And that's going to be our button label or whatever. And to turn this into a component, we can do it now or we can do it later. We'll do it now. There's a button here called create component, or you can do Option Command K and it'll turn purple and you'll see this little icon both in the layers panel and on top of it. And that's an indicator that this is like a main component. If you have this in a library on a sticker sheet or something, or if somebody pulled it in from the assets panel in your system, they would get it in this view, which is an instance of the component, and it'll have a empty diamond. And that's how you know that this is like not the main component. So a designer using this won't be able to come in and like actually change anything about what's going on unless they do it in the styles property, but they can't like change the structure. They can't add things to it. It's like locked into the system unless they detach it. And that's how most designers will use components from a design system. But if you're the person building the components, you'll see these a lot more. And so if I wanted to like add padding on it, or let's add a background color first, I'll turn the fill on and we'll change it to like, what's your favorite color, Ed? Orange. I knew that, I think. Right?
Yeah, you get a 50-50 chance between orange and blue.
Yeah.
There you go.
And yeah, I remember when you painted your outfits orange or something like that. So let's see. And then so now we have
wearing an orange shirt in front of his blue wall.
Yeah. So we have a button with, and I added a radius. Here's where you do border radius up here. I like the look of them right now, so we'll do that. And then we can add auto layout so we can get our padding. So Shift A or click add auto layout, and let's add our padding. Oh, that's too much. We'll do a little bit of top and bottom padding, and like now we have a button. So that's easy enough. Like a designer can go use this. Cool. Like they can come in here and change the color if they want. If they can always do that. They can change the text color. Then come in and type their label and it'll hold up like you expect. But there's some other things that you can do. Let me reset this. So if I wanted to have like, I don't know, like a different, like an outline button version, you could come in here and say add variant, and that'll turn it into this kind of other view, which this is how you know that there's some variants going on. So what you get here is this outer wrapper is actually the component, but then there's all these instances or these variants inside of it that you can set different properties on. So right now it comes out of the box with property 1, default, and then variant 2. So I can come in here and maybe we're going to call this, I don't know, button style or style or something. I like to use emojis a lot in my names just for fun. Like if it's something where I have kind of a system. If it's a Boolean that you're going to turn on and off, I do eyes. If it's text that you're going to edit, I do a pencil. If it's something that is a drop down you choose from, I do the pointer finger. If it's like an instant swap where it's like a puzzle piece, when you puzzle it in, I do a puzzle. So I have like my own little way that I like to write these styles because they just visually stand out to me. So for this one, I might do that and like say style, and then I can come in and say this is default like, or whatever
hover state, disable.
You could do hover state and then in these as well. Yeah. We could do that. And or we'll just do style. So then maybe this one
I'm trying
is,
to think of all the ones in the Kendo library now. Like there's an icon button and
yeah.
there's
And you maybe wouldn't always want to have them all in one component either. It depends. I like to try to make as little main components as possible, but there are some instances where maybe you want your icon button to be its own component and not
a different thing.
built into this component. You could probably do it though. So I should have turned that into a style or something, but that's another thing. So I could come in here and make the outline button. Maybe that's the outline button. So this one's going to we call it outline. And this one is actually what's called a filled. So then me as a designer using this in the system, now I get this little menu where I can choose between outline and filled or whatever other variants that you need in this. You can do other properties too. Like maybe we do want an icon as an option in here. So I don't have an icon, so let me just draw a circle. And I'll make it white. I'm gonna turn this into a component so I can use it. So this is like icon. So I'll take an instance of that and come select this button and paste it inside. And this button has auto layout. So, that's why it's going sideways. I can select that and move it to the left of the button. If I want to make this bigger, you can just come make this frame however big you want actually, or you can click this button here and it'll make it whatever size to fit.
Nice.
So now I have this icon. Let me put it in the other one, do the same. And it needs to be a little smaller. So I can come to my main component and just say, oh, it's going to be 14 now. So it changed everywhere. That's why you use components. Like at least like to be dry about it in your editing.
Yeah.
So now I have this button I can use, and what I can come in into this icon and select. There's another cool thing. If you have like 10 variants and they all have the icon, if you select the first one, this little target thing kind of shows up. You can select all the other ones that are named the same in the whole variant list, and then apply properties to them all, like if you're doing it like I'm doing it. So what I want to do here is change this to a on and off. So if you come to the layer panel area, there's this little icon here that's creating a Boolean property. I can do my little eyeball emoji and then put like icon. The default value is true. And what that'll do now is give the designer a toggle that can turn that on and off. So you actually could have like options like that built into your button too. Maybe you have left and right icons, so you can do it. You can either do it as that kind of property or as a variant. So like maybe you needed a variant for some reason where it was on the right because you wanted to still be able to turn it off. You could say like, this one is button right. Like it's endless. So it depends how you organize your system. But then as a designer, I could do filled, outline, button right, and still turn off the icon no matter what, because the property is on the icon. You do the same thing with text. If I select all the text and you come down here, you can change text in this text panel. You can turn that into a property. That's when I use the pencil icon a lot and say label. And now me as a designer, if I would rather not double click into the text, which a lot of times I still do, honestly. I don't use text properties a lot. I just feel like I'm faster just double clicking, or actually I command click a lot. That's a trick in Figma too. If something's like nested, my first click is this, I got to double click down. If you hold command, it'll like directly select nested things, which saves a lot of time. But I can come in here and say label. So that's kind of like an overview. There's other things you can do with components. Like I could make this if it was hover states, I could hook up a prototype inside of this component. And then if I use this in my prototype, when I'm in my play mode, like the hover state holds up. Like there's lots of things you can do with components.
Figma is just so cool. I'm like,
I could nerd out on it all day. Yeah.
Okay. I have two more things before we wrap for sure. First is, Ed, was there anything you were dying to know that we didn't somehow cover?
No, I think between the page
This is why
demo and the button demo, I think I got a lot of introduction to something I knew nothing about.
Yep. Oh, my doorbell rang. Funny timing. My dog's barking. Yeah, I would just watch the Figma Bytes videos. They're quick. They go, if you watch them from the beginning to end, it kind of has a sequence. There's not really a sequence though. So yeah, whatever you're curious about, it just a couple minutes. I think the longest one, there's a couple that are 10 minutes. We call them big bites. They go over a little more
Cute.
deeper into a concept. So there's one about making a mock too, Ed. So that one goes into a lot of details about how you would make
Nice.
like a layout and stuff.
Man, I think that's about it. That hour flew by.
Absolutely. And you
So-
can check out Chris's YouTube page. Are there any other resources, Chris, that you have out there you wanted to share?
There's a community file too. If you search Figma Bytes, it's kind of the same as going to the YouTube page, but every time we put a new video out, I take the thumbnail image, put it in there with the link, and then publish it. So it's like you can copy it into your Figma space and get all the links to the videos right there in your Figma space if you want.
Nice.
Awesome. It was great catching up with
And-
you, man. I haven't chatted with you in too long.
Yeah, this was a lot of fun.
Where can folks find you online besides Figma Bytes if they want to
Yeah.
connect?
Hateful Crawdad, pretty much everywhere. Hatefulcrawdad.com. I do artwork and stuff as well outside of work. So
Nice.
those are kind of like the most two ways. Instagram is the one I'm most kind of active on. I try to do Twitter and Threads. Just can't get it back into my workflow these days. I enjoy
That's
just the more visual side, I think, of Instagram.
Yeah, Chris is a fantastic artist. He's just like, yeah, I do art. He does amazing art. So check it out.
So,
Thank you.
all right. I think that's it for React Wednesdays. Thank you again so much, both of y'all, for coming on, especially Chris. That was a really great breakdown. So
Awesome. It was a lot of fun. Thanks. Hopefully I didn't talk too fast. You can slow it down.
right, folks can just have speed
Yeah.
when they rewatch.
There's so
I
much
didn't
to
think you
cover.
spoke too
It's like,
fast.
yeah, you gotta jam. So
Yeah, big jam.
yeah, there you go.
Okay, terrible joke. We'll end on that one.
No, that
Goodbye
was
before
good.
I say anything worse. See y'all.
Bye.